Hello and welcome to another video on my channel. So today we're going to talk about a very serious topic, and this is called how would you spot a fraud, right? So there are so many different signs and ways you need to be aware of whenever you are trying to spot a fraud person, and this can be done in very different ways, in different kind of things you need to look for in order to get, the right impression of a person and if they're really a fraud or not. So this video is about, false promises and deception. Those two itself combined will give an equal amount of trust to the person the fraud is trying to make trust towards, and that can also lead to different kind of things, strategies, and so on, that basically can make people do things. You can get involved in things that are illegal. You can be asked to do something. Maybe they're not directly trying to make you do something illegal, but they might be suffering from sort of disease or something. They might be sick in their mind in some way that make them, want to do different kind of things, have lots of ideas. So first of all, let's talk about the signs and of false promises. So first of all, let's talk about the inconsistency thing. Like the person is frequently changing the story to make up commitments that are inconsistent with the previous statement. Now, depending on the level of IQ and how smart people actually are, or how smart the fraud is, those stories can be changed per individual. So the fraud could change the stories to different kind of individual people. It could also just be a thing that you overall will start spotting that, after a certain amount of time of your involvement with some kind of fraud person, you will begin to think, something is wrong here. Things are beginning to sound too weird or too, this is happening every time I'm promised something. I'm always waiting for the exact moment that the fraud is about to do something for me that will show their real involvement in whatever they're trying to tell you that they do or can or have. So really, that is a thing you need to look for, and it's gonna make a lot of noise in your head because they're really smart. Remember that they are doing this all the time to many different kind of people. Okay, so another thing of sign of false promises is a lack of details. Promises are often vague, lack of specific details about how they'll be fulfilled. So basically, this is all about, let's make something up for now. Maybe they promise you can earn a lot of money, for example. That is a very common thing that people want. It's like money. They promise you something like wealth, money, resources, something like that. And it could also be different kind of things, but it's something you want. So depending on the person the fraud is talking to, that person or the victim will then be intercepted in different ways from the fraud. So think about it this way. I promise you a lot of money. I promise you can be rich if you do something with me, for me. Maybe we do stuff. So at the end of the day, you might ask, what is the bad purpose here? Is there any kind of purpose that makes the fraud bad person? Well, depends what it is, but I'm going to get to this in the end of the video. Too good to be true stories, right? The promises seem overly optimistic or over realistic. This can be very difficult to spot these kind of things because if you don't know anything about what they are really asking you, like if it's a topic that they kind of engage you with, it's like, let's do something together, right? Then they might, spot the weakness in you. They want something from you. What exactly that is, it could be very different. Most of the time, it is probably something narcissistic, or they want the attention. They have a lack of self persona, something like that. There could be many different things that could make them do these kind of things, go these kind of adventures. I just really want to say that it's highly difficult to spot the good stories that are true, and sometimes you have to stop and think, I'm promised something, but they never really get to the point where they are started. There's always some sort of excuse. So, avoidance is a fourth sign. The person avoids giving concrete answers or timelines when questioned about the promises. This is very typical behavior. So that kind of requires some time. So you kind of have to walk like at the fence. If you're beginning to cross the fence, then you might get to this part faster and easier, because you will be promised more things that cannot be fulfilled, and they're kind of inviting you to give you the actual answer. And whenever you ask for something, they might just disappear, be quiet, and sometimes you've asked them enough, they just stay away from you. And they know, right? They're being questioned, because you will begin to be like asking them questions that they literally cannot answer. Sorry, they will just be like, they cannot do anything about it. That is the point. The track record is a fifth sign. The person has a history of not fulfilling their promises. So how would you go ahead and find that kind of information? Well, you kind of would need to do some background check on a person. And that can be done by, for example, Googling them, find out the name. Sometimes they're using the wrong name. Sometimes they're using a name that is not easy to find, or using different names. If they have a LinkedIn profile, Facebook profile, social media profile, it's easier. But if you don't have that, you need some sort of information about them. And whatever things is online that can catch you red flags, definitely worth digging into that a bit. If you can find some people that know them already, dealing with them, or have been dealing with them, probably try and talk to those. But be careful about how you do that, because people sometimes react, if you're, for example, finding someone that is caught in the lie right now by the fraud, well, they might react hostile towards you and say to the fraud, and the fraud will then, be even, avoid you even more. So that's really a thing. So let's talk about signs of deception. So the body language, watch for signs such as avoidance of eye contact, fidgeting, could also be inconsistent facial expressions. Sometimes they just run their mouth off, and that's a thing. A second sign deception would be overcompensation. Now, the person might provide excessive details, or seem only eager to convince you of their honesty. Now, this can come in many different kind of levels. It could be like you're talking to someone and they maybe know everything about everything you talk about, or maybe they know someone in the company you talk about, and they seem like, I'm just gonna call him and that, and just say things and just sound overly, they just want to get into your person, right? Third one could be contradictions. The statement might contradict from facts from previous statements. That's straightforward, So basically, it's all about, gathering evidence as much as you can. Evasion, they may avoid direct questionings or change the subject when asked for specifics. That's a very common one. So you may be asked about something, and then they, but listen, you have to like this and that, and then they change the topic and something more interesting for you, and maybe raise their voice a little bit, like say, hey, yeah, that's true, but, and then they say but, then they're gonna do something about it, and then you get into a different kind of thing. Inconsistency in tone, there might be a fluctuation in the tone of voice indicating discomfort or anxiety. And it's a common thing to play on emotions. So whenever you are getting close to something or too close, they might change that to draw you towards their, deception of, sadness or something like that. So the third category is going to be strategies to spot deception and false promises. Okay, so very specific strategy is basically just to ask for specifics. Request detailed information about how the promised will be fulfilled. For example, if they told you that they did something, let's say that they wrote some programs or something, or hacked something, or did something specific to you that means something to you, to that they will seem more legit for you, ask about it. If they avoid, or we're talking about that evasion strategy, signs of deception, they're overcompensating, they're inconsistent, they might, say different kind of things. Sometimes they even have an issue trying to remember the thing that they lied to you about, because they lied to so many different kind of people. It's very difficult to continue that, but that's also why that these kind of people tend to do these kind of, lies to one person at a time. Not saying they have more than one they lie to at the same time. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that they have one person, let's say you, and they try to pull you in, and if you don't play along, or they got from you what you want, maybe they want to try and steal your ideas, who knows, right? Then they're just gonna, smack you away. So also, verify information is a strategy. Cross-check the information provided with reliable sources and evidence. Yeah, so if they tell you they did something, verify it. Sometimes, they have to say something in order to get you started. It's easier for them to find a topic that's difficult for you to prove, and that could be different kind of things. So beware of that, and think about whenever they say they did or do or are something or whatever, look it up. Try and find it out, but it's very difficult. Let's find an example. If let's say they said they had a company with a million, many multi-million income a month and stuff like that. Well, it's going to be difficult for you to find out, but if they don't want to tell you the exact company name, they just say a specific name that doesn't exist, you can't find it, they're probably going to find out some sort of excuse for that. But, that's the thing. You can also observe behavior over time. It can be a third strategy. Look for patterns in the personal behavior or reliability over an extended period. And that's kind of go hand in hand with this inconsistency and track record. That's good to be true. So you have to observe what really goes on. If you encounter evasion as a sign of deception, whenever you ask for specifics, and whenever you try to ask for it, they find some sort of excuse every time. Well, it's definitely a sign that they still want something for you if they keep contacting you, but also that they are a fraud. So, yeah. The fourth strategy could be check for consistency, ensure the statements are consistent over time and with known facts. So you can always try and bind up against something, if they say they lived somewhere or been somewhere, did something, try and ask about who they met or where they did it or who did they work with or something like that. Ask for specific information. The fifth strategy could be trust your intuition. Pay attention to your gut feeling or instincts if something seems off or goes too good to be true. So, really, that's the most important part, I guess. It's I know something is off. You can definitely feel it. Everything is tingling in you, but you just can't put your finger down on it. So, what are you really going to do about that? So, that's when you look for signs of deceptions. You're thinking about the signs and false promises. You also have your strategies to spot deception and false promises. That's really what you're going to try and do now. So the last hint in strategies to spot deception, false promises, is to seek feedback. Get opinions, from others who might have experience with the person in question, and that's easy enough. You can find someone that worked with them, had experience with them. You can just basically ask them and say, well, what was the outcome? How did you encounter them? If they say the same thing, well, basically it's a really good sign that you thought correctly. We're now switching over to a different kind of video now. It's a different kind of section of the video, which is basically called, why am I talking about this in terms of cybersecurity? Because this is what this channel is mostly about. And this is basically a thing when you talk about threats, cybersecurity threats. You talk about stuff like social engineering, insider threats, impersonation and fraud, manipulation and exploitation. You talk about dissemination, misinformation that is spreading false information. Also advanced persistent threats if it sees a long-term infiltration. All these kind of things I just mentioned there is basically someone that is person of the fraud, and they are really con artists. Chances are they've been there for many years, doing the same thing, perfecting their strategies, trying to involve people to something, and depending on what it is they want for you, they can also give you stuff, give you or gift you. If they gift you stuff, like I know it sounds weird that they gift you, but basically that means if you are gifted, not skill wise, but if you are gifted by the fraud, they're giving you stuff because they want you to be like, oh, I am so important. They're giving you something that you want, and they're probably going to be happy, not asking too much. As long as they do that, it's a very, very big chance they want something from you. Not exactly what it is, but, something there. So, as a company, you probably think, well, do I have some strategies for you? I do have some strategies for you. So, this is mitigation strategies, and the first one is called education training. So, please think about that. Regular training for employees, recognize or spreading in social engineering attacks. It's called access control, implementing strict access control and monitoring system to detect and prevent authorized access. Because if they're really good at this social engineering, or insider threats, even if they work in your company, it can be very difficult for you to accept that. But the most dangerous person in your company is actually your employees, because they have access. Why? So the only difference between a employee and a person as a hacker is that the hacker don't have access, but the employee have access. The only thing you should change now is the mindset that you're going to push that employee. And if that employee is pushed and is a con artist, they can do many different kind of things. Behavioral analysis. Use behavioral analysis tool to check unusual or suspicious behavior. This is more digital wise, but if you have someone that does things that can be monitored, online, definitely something you need to, activate on your system. You always need multi-factor authentication. When I say multi, I don't really mean two factors, just itself, but just multi-factor. You always need some sort of instant response plan if, the catastrophe is on. You need to get some sort of plan to mitigate that. That's really about that. And the last thing is called regular audits, conducting regular security audits to identify and address vulnerabilities, because even though that this is nothing really to do with a con artist, it's just still a thing. You need to verify what can that con artist actually do, and really this is the thing. So if you think about all the things that I talked about, look at the description below in the video. I posted the script that I created for this, and I think you should take a look at it, and it's gonna help you to understand what's going on. And I'm really just here to give you some free education. It's like a 20 minutes video, so you can start thinking about it. And all I really want is to you to stay more safe and be aware and how to spot a fraud, right?